Good afternoon. I'm Bob Glenn, editor and publisher of Wire Rope Exchange. Wire Rope Exchange is a sales and marketing resource for the lifting, rigging, and load securement industries. Think about every product you need between a crane and anything you might want to lift with a crane. I'm here this afternoon with Robert Desel, the CEO of the Crosby Group. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Bob. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. I really appreciate you taking time to speak with us today.
Happy to be here. Looking forward to the chat.
Fantastic. Well, 2020 has certainly gotten off to an interesting start. Back on March 19th, you issued a statement from the Crosby Group outlining your initial response to COVID-19 and steps you had taken. I assume that response on March 19th reflected a good deal of contingency planning and a lot of thought as well as adaptation on the fly. Can you walk us through, and I know that you've updated that statement several times since then, can you walk us through the Crosby Group's response to COVID-19?
Sure. So, we started preparing for this pandemic, although we didn't know it was going to be a pandemic at the time, kind of late February, because as a global business, we've got team members in Asia and Australia and different parts around the world. And so we started seeing kind of the rumblings and started making preparations. And obviously, we made some public statements in the middle of March and thereafter. It was interesting to me as we went through that process and up until just, even today, that our three core values are safety, reliability, and innovation. Mm-hmm. And we were really able to rely on those. So the first thing that we worked on was safety of the team. And that started with things like travel restrictions, particularly for some of our international technical and field sales support personnel. And then it quickly migrated to how we operate our plants more safely, work from home, which we're still running in most of our markets right now. That cascaded into a fairly big technology effort to make sure we had the bandwidth and we had the connectivity and the applications that we could work effectively from home. And then we've continued to evolve the safety protocols at all of our sites globally. So that was kind of the safety piece, right? Number one important, safety of our team, and then obviously safety of our customers through the products that we deliver. When we thought about reliability, right, that's about continuing to make product and have good availability on the shelf. And for the most part, all of our plants have been running pretty much full tilt throughout the past 4 or 5 months. I've kind of lost track of how long we've been in this for. We've taken a couple of breaks in places based on demand, but we've only had a handful of kind of COVID cases, and that's really a testament to the local team. So we're a big global company. We've got 1,600 employees. We operate over 30 sites around the world. But it really comes down to those site leaders, right? At each of those 30 sites, there is one individual that leads that team that has the burden and the responsibility of keeping them safe. So working with our protocols, they've implemented them extraordinarily well and been able to get those sites up and running, or keep them up and running. And then finally on innovation, right? So we talked about working from home, not super innovative, but definitely required a little bit of rethink of our processes. But the other thing we've done on the innovation front is really pivot to more digital customer engagement. We moved a lot of our training online. We've shrunk it down into more bite-sized pieces. We partnered with our distribution channel, recognizing that they've still got a lot of salespeople that are working, but maybe can't work the way they used to. How do we make sure we're using their time effectively to advance their knowledge and advance their skills so as we return back to normal, they haven't skipped a beat? So we really kind of relied, as I said, on safety, number one, reliability, keeping the plants and the distribution centers up and running, and then finally innovation, both from how we run and then also how we engage with the customers.
Yeah, I think for people I've talked to around the industry, the customer engagement piece, I like to think that given the work we do in the lifting and rigging world, that adapting some new safety protocols ought not be quite so profound a challenge for us as it might be for other industries. But the customer engagement piece is a big adjustment for everyone to make. I mean, I think our business is normally very much an in-person, an in-person activity, both in sales and in training.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm relatively new to this industry, and I'm reminded at least weekly, sometimes more often, how critical the personal relationship is with, number one, our distributors, right, who are our partner into the market, but then also obviously the end users. And maintaining that relationship when you're at a distance, it takes a little bit more work, and it takes a little bit more thought, and it takes a little bit more planning, right? Your salespeople are not on their normal routes.
Well, obviously, to direct a response of that scope and scale in an organization as large as yours, you have to stay informed on a lot of topics and keep a very broad perspective. Have you made other observations kind of out in the wider world that have informed the work you're doing?
Yeah, I think there's two things I think about and I pay a lot of attention to. And one is a lot of these changes that are going on, right? Work from home, remote, digital training. Which of those are actually a better way to operate and that we need to carry with us into the future? And which of those were we forced to do for safety reasons or other reasons that we maybe are suboptimal and we want to get back to the traditional way of doing things? And it's an interesting split. I don't know where it comes out on each of those, right? But I know, for example, our investment in digital training, that's something that I think we're gonna continue to invest in. So that's one kind of area. The other thing that's really become, obvious or very apparent to me, and I've heard this in the media as well, is how important the manufacturing base is in any given country. Now we're a U.S.-based business. We've got global operations. I live in the U.S., so I see the U.S. kind of dynamics a little bit more clearly. But if you look at the situation, say, with PPE or ventilators, a lot of the stress that we saw was a function of very long, complex supply chains, which, while very low cost, right, with a lot of that product coming over from Asia, were not terribly resilient, right, and made any given country very reliant on other places that had their own issues to deal with. I think at the beginning of the year, if someone had asked me, do you think nasal swabs are going to be a critical item for the U.S. economy in 2020, I would have looked at them like they had three heads. Like, what are you talking about? Well, it turns out they were. It turns out we don't make them. Except I think there's one company in Maine that makes them. So the vibrancy and the resiliency of the U.S. manufacturing base, or any domestic manufacturing base for that matter, I think has become much clearer focus for the governments and the customers and the economies around the world. And I think that's one of those things we're going to take with us out of this. So that's the other kind of big thing that I think has been a wake-up call.
Let's talk about this trade-off between efficiency and resiliency. As business people, I think we understand efficiency very, very well. We have efficiency drilled into us in everything we do, and we naturally go seek efficiency. It's easy we can quantify it. And if we do something in our business that makes our business more efficient, it pays off in perpetuity. So if our business operates more efficiently tomorrow than it did today, all of our stakeholders are better off. Management's better off. Employees are better off. Shareholders are better off. All good things come from that. Resilience is a trickier thing, I think, for us to think about and act on. You may have to give away a little bit of efficiency to do things that make your business more resilient, and that payoff isn't immediate. The payoff tomorrow for that activity may be zero, and at some future point, the payoff for that for making your business more resilient may be the entire value of your enterprise, but you don't see that payoff today.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's about something you can see right in front of you versus more of an investment in the future, right? Now, we obviously want both, right? And we strive for both every single day. We strive for efficiency, but we also we really invest in resiliency the same way we invest in safety. It's kind of like safety, right? You put money into your plants or your products today so that something doesn't happen tomorrow, right? So that you have a safe workforce, so that you have extraordinarily high quality product that can get the job done. Resiliency is the same in my mind. So, we've designed a very vertically integrated supply chain. So, I tell my team, if we have steel and we have energy and we have people and our people want to work, we can pretty much make any product in the catalog today. We don't have a huge complex supply chain. Now that requires a tremendous amount of investment. We put tens of millions of dollars into our plant in Longview for that resiliency, right? Now it's also very efficient, but it also gives us a tremendous amount of resiliency at times like this. So, we're very appreciative of the model that we've adopted, because we've been able to keep running and flex with the demand very, very effectively. But it is, it is a trade-off in one way, but if you have the long-term interests of your customers and your employees and the market in mind, that trade-off becomes a little bit easier to make. If you're trying to optimize today, then you will sacrifice one for the other, unfortunately.
That's a great perspective. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Just another point on resiliency. I'm sorry, because you've got my mind thinking now. I think the other piece of that, when you think about kind of localization, is the importance of the distributor.
Mm-hmm.
So we make rigging hardware, but it requires one of our value-added fabricators in many cases to turn that into something that the end customer is ultimately going to use, whether it's a sling or a lifting beam or some other engineered solution. So having that strong local distribution that is also bringing product closer to the end market, bringing engineering expertise, that further adds to our resiliency. And as I've talked to our distributors, I think we've got an amazing channel. We've got amazing channel partners, and they add and in many cases enhance Crosby's resiliency through times like this because of what they bring to the local market, the capabilities, the inventory, the balance sheet, and the people. That further takes that resiliency even further than any manufacturer could. So there's one final word on kind of, we tend to think about our plants a lot, but we also think a lot about the distribution channel, critical partners and critical to that resiliency.
So one of the conversations I've been having around the industry with folks that I'm talking to, a couple of people have told me in the last week or two, we're business people, and so the glass always has to be half full. And we're trying to counsel people to kind of maintain a level of optimism about what's going on and about how the industry is going to respond and recover as well. For a lot of reasons. There was a great quote from Colin Powell where he described optimism as a force multiplier, believing that you're doing the right things and believing that the things you're doing are going to be effective actually helps make them effective and makes them succeed. So we're obviously all doing a lot of things very differently than we were before, and not able, but we're able to do, I think we're able as an industry to deliver everything we want to deliver right now, or mostly from people I talk to. The one of the outages for us in putting together the magazine is just the absence of industry events with things largely taken online or postponed. We don't have the easy opportunity to go interact with the industry in the way we might typically do. And so the way we're assembling our content has had to change quite a lot. We're having conversations like this one and doing lots of other things in lieu of actually being able to go to events and interact with the industry. And it is a very, it's a people-oriented industry. And so that is something that we definitely miss out of here.
Yeah, I think it will be interesting to see if there are some events that can come together this year. I mean, I think 4 weeks ago with where things were trended, I think people were probably maybe more optimistic. I think today, as we look at some of the case counts, in the U.S. at least, I think it's maybe a little bit more of a long shot. Other parts of the world seem to be trending better. So, we certainly are seeing our European business come back much, much faster and stronger. So maybe we'll see some more events pop out of Europe sooner than other parts of the world. I think, just to go back to your point, I think the point on optimism is really, really important, right? There are so many things that we can't control, and there's so many challenges out there. You know, we spend a lot of time internally as a team trying to make sure we see and recognize the wins, whether they be little wins or big wins, both commercially as well as operationally. Like our great fill rate is one that we've been celebrating, and that's a tribute to our manufacturing teams. And as I'm talking to our channel partners, our distributors, I think this is a time when we have to boost each other up, right? Mm-hmm. We have to be there as a shoulder that you can lean on and we can commiserate. But at the end of the conversation, we have to leave on a positive note about what the future is going to hold. And I think, you know, planning for the future and planning for success is part of that equation, right? So when we're talking to distributors about, hey, let us understand your inventory position, let us understand your end market demand, because we want to have the right product on the shelf, that signals to them that we're planning for the future, right? We're not putting our head in the sand. We're not going into our shell and we'll see you in October, right? We're actively making investments and bets on the future today. And I think that's really important. And I think it's important for the broader kind of that economic flywheel turning, right? So we've started to release some capital investments at some of our plants, right? And that CapEx is going to buy equipment, and that equipment is going to put people back to work somewhere else in the U.S., and that plant's going to need a chain sling for something, and they're going to go to a distributor, because, hey, we just got a big order from Crosby, or we got an order from Crosby, and we got to move this equipment around, and they're going to buy a chain sling, and we're going to get that flywheel turning, but it takes, you got to seed it with a little bit of optimism. So we are definitely planning for the future, and we're planning for that future with our channel partners.
Robert, I really want to thank you for the time today. I've enjoyed the conversation a lot, and I think your perspective, your very thoughtful perspective on the industry, is something that all of us benefit from hearing.
Thanks, Bob. Great to be here with you.
You can learn more about Wire Rope Exchange and read our latest issue online at wireropeexchange.com. You can also follow us and interact with us through social media on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. We write about new products, interesting and inspiring projects, both large and small, and most of all about the people that make this industry go in our publication. If you're working on something that you might like to share with our audience, you can find our contact details on the web or simply email me, editor@wireropeexchange.com. Thank you for joining us today, and have a great day.